Podcast City Network.
This is Final Score, your number one podcast for sports news. Here are your hosts, Chris and Craig.
Hey guys, we are live for another episode of Final Score, episode 51 here on Facebook Live. I tell you what, it's been a while. I'm losing my mind, but I'm not losing my mind as much as the guy you see next to me on the screen, and that is Craig. Thank you so much for coming back, Craig, and quarantine hasn't killed you yet.
No, it hasn't killed me yet. It's been interesting being cooped up with the girlfriend and the kids, but it's been fun. The only good part I can say is that I've been in the pool every single day, so even though it's been getting extremely hot right now, I'm still cooling off.
What's that life like? I'm on day 12 of dying with 4 children. I'm surprised my hair's not falling out. Well, if you weren't always sick all the
time, I'd welcome you over, but I don't want that near me, which is why we're doing this.
Let's see, 6 + 4. CDC says no, so we can't do that. But it's okay though. But we get to do this now. You know, we've been trying to work things along and get to the point where we can do remote shows like this, so we can have a little bit more freedom in how we do Final Score. So welcome to the very first remote show of Final Score, Quarantine Edition. So much great stuff to talk about. But first things first, you got to make sure that if you're going to keep up to date with all things Final Score, that you have to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at PCN Final Score. Give us a like, give us a follow. Check out all the great stuff that we have and all the posts that we make. And of course, invite your friends, share with your friends, and more importantly than anything, leave us a rating. Let us know how we're doing, because we try to bring the very best Final Score that we can, whether it be with the production value or with Craig's beautiful face. This is what we try to do. So at the end of the day, go check us out over there. And, of course, on all of our content platforms on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Podbean, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and, of course, Apple Podcasts. All you have to do is go on any of those platforms, search keyword Final Score, one word, and give us a like and follow there. And check out all the great content, including this one, episode 51. And so much going on, so much greatness. And you know what? It wouldn't be possible without Podcast City Network. We've got a big, beautiful banner over here now. Look, that's real. That's not graphics. That's real. So you can definitely check out.
That's not a green screen.
Yeah, not a green screen. This is real. So you can definitely check out Podcast City Network and all the great myriad of different podcasts that we have there. You can go on social media. Just check out on Facebook /Podcast City Network, on Twitter @Podcast City Net. Of course, you can also check them out on YouTube. Just search Podcast City Network and give us a follow or subscription. Of course, you can also check it out on Twitch, twitch.tv /Podcast City Network. And of course, at our website, podcastcity.net. We always have some great stuff going on, so definitely make sure to go check it out. But to get things back to the Final Score side, you can check us out now on PodChaser. Go to podchaser.com and search keyword Final Score, one word. Give us a follow, a rating, a review. Let us know how we're doing, and we can definitely interact with you on there. So definitely go on there and do that, as well as going on to BULLHORN, which you can download on any of your Android or on any of your Apple devices, and search keyword Final Score, also one word, and give us a follow and a listen. So much to say.
Whoa, man, that was. Are you okay? Did you breathe through that whole thing?
I'm not sure. I feel a little lightheaded, so I'm just gonna assume no. But things happen.
All right, well, I'll kick things off because
I gotta catch my breath.
through all this tragedy, there's one bright note. There's one glimmer of hope for sports fans out there. Tom Brady is no longer with the New England Patriots. He has moved on. Of course, you have been living under a rock. Tom Brady officially on Instagram, everyone thought it was a ruse, that he was going to come back to New England. He decides to move on, the next chapter, probably last chapter in his career, and he's going to none other than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFC South. I was surprised because I know I thought he was going to Tennessee. Honestly, I thought he was going to Tennessee. It seemed like a match made in heaven. But but he decides to go and work with Bruce Arians in that offense, which was a very high-powered offense, mind you.
It definitely is. But the big thing I feel that we need to look at here with this whole situation when it comes to Tom Brady and his signing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is the sheer fact that he was able to go in and pitch himself and be able to get the amount of control he wanted to be able to have the kind of team that he wanted around him. So the big thing is making sure that he was able to do so. And to be able to do so, you got to be able to have some kind of leverage. And you know what he does? He just glints around 6 rings. He just glints it around and just says, oh, yeah, look at this. I have this. Oh. So at the end of the day, I'm not too surprised he ended up going to Tampa Bay. You know, Tennessee ended up having a lot of lucky success, it feels like, with Ryan Tannehill. So I'm not too surprised things ended up going that kind of route. But, you know, we kind of saw them kind of going back and forth. They didn't know what Tennessee was going to really do. Derrick Henry and other players that come out in huge support of Ryan Tannehill and what he was able to do for that team last season, even though it really just consisted of, there you go, Derrick Henry. So at the end of the day, you know, it is what it is. But Tennessee felt they have something that was working for them. So why abandon that? So it makes sense for them to try and go in a different direction. Don't give up on the guy. You did make a deal with him, and then they ended up signing him to that large 4-year contract. So they obviously made their intentions known. We actually have some breaking news right now. Khabib, famous UFC fighter, is unable to leave Russia for UFC 249. So a lot of crazy things going on. Current developing story right now. But back to Tom Brady, though, it's him coming to Tampa Bay. I think all came down to the fact that he was able to get the kind of deal that he wanted, which was the 2-year, $50 million contract, fully guaranteed. And it also has more incentives on top of it, I believe, if I actually use my notes for once. But it's just great to see what was able to achieve with the $9 million in extra incentives, $4.5 million each year. He also has a no trade clause and no tag clause, so he knows he's not going to go anywhere. And he's able to come in with 2 all-pro wide receivers with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. And let's not forget, you also have O.J. Howard over there. So there's just so many weapons, so much that can be done. And let's not forget, we're still in free agency, and there ain't a whole lot else going on. So these teams are really trying to do their scouting, trying to look at the video of these players, and really trying to find what Tom Brady wants, what's going to work for Tom Brady.
Well, looking at just how this team is already set up, some of the rankings, that they were 3rd in points last year. They scored just over 28.5. They were 3rd in yards, and they were 1st in passing yards. And that's with Jameis Winston, who was part of the infamous 30-30 club. But I'm really intrigued to see how Tom Brady is going to be able to function with these weapons around him now, because you forgot to mention Cameron Brate, who's a huge red zone threat. That tight end is extremely tall, lanky, but he's the guy in the red zone that Jameis Winston and company love to look for when they got close to the end zone. But they lost Peyton Barber. Their rush game was bottom half of the league, only 95 yards a game. So Tom Brady is going to be coming into a situation where he's got so many weapons around him, and I would not be surprised to see if he has probably a monster year coming in to Tampa Bay, because look at last year, what he did with a depleted offense and no weapons around him. His completion percentage was the 2nd lowest since 2013, and he still completed over 60% of his passes, which is still better than one Cam Newton, which we'll talk about in a minute. But he threw for over 4,000 yards. He threw for less than 10 interceptions. He just doesn't turn the ball over, and that's one thing that Tampa Bay is desperately needed, because Bruce Arians is going to chalk up some plays to get Godwin the ball, to get Evans the ball, to get O.J. Howard the ball. But now I think the attention has to be paid to how is Tom Brady going to be able to coexist with Byron Leftwich, who was a first-year offensive coordinator. I've said this once, I'll say it again. Byron Leftwich is going to be an NFL head coach within the next 3 to 5 years.
Ooh, that's saying something. You really have a lot of faith in Byron.
Look what he did in 1 year with Jameis Winston as his quarterback. Imagine what he can do with a guy like Tom Brady, who, he's in his 40s, but he's still got it. He can still sling it. He can't sling it down the field as much, but that's really where, if you can keep Evans healthy, he'll be able to have that threat for a defense down the field. And I mean, look at the guys that he likes to use. He likes to use his tight ends. He's got two very good tight ends.
Very good
He
tight
likes
ends.
to use his running backs. All Tampa Bay has to do is either draft or go and get a guy like, I don't know, Devontae Freeman's still out there. Go get a guy like Devontae Freeman, who's a multi-purpose back. You could probably get him at a really good discount right now.
And he's not bad out of the backfield catching balls, so
hey, Tom Brady likes to use all the weapons he has, and Godwin he's not a huge deep threat guy compared to Mike Evans, but I mean, he likes to use all of his weapons. And when you put a double tight end formation there, I mean, take a look at what he had or how he done with the last time he had two great tight ends.
Mm-hmm. Very good point. It's a very good point. And we see him have a lot of success in those in those kinds of areas. And also, Tampa Bay actually has a pretty decent defense. The big thing, though, that I see here is that there's a lot of speculation about possibly Antonio Brown now being brought in, given the kind of chemistry him and Tom Brady had with their one game even in New England. But Arians has already started shooting this down. Is there any kind of possibility you feel like that Antonio Brown will end up being in a Bucs uniform?
If they're smart, no. And if the NFL is smart, he will never play another down in the NFL again.
No hate here.
You know the train that everyone, if you've paid attention to our show, what's up, David C. Russell? How's it going? Thanks for the shout out and appreciate Everett sharing the stream as well. We got a few people in the chat. Post your comments in here. Let us know how you feel. Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, how they're going to do. We'll live on air, respond. So we'll have a lot of fun with it. But back to the Bucs. You know the train that I've been on with Antonio Brown. I think he has already dug himself a deep enough hole. He should not be in the NFL anymore. No team should want to take a chance on him. The Raiders of all teams was the one team everyone's like, yeah, they'll take a chance. And look at how badly that ended.
Yeah, that was ugly.
Mean, so I'm completely on board with what Bruce Arians is going for here and completely shooting it down right away. There's no possible way. Why would you want to wreck that chemistry that you have in your locker room? And you've already got a good receiving core. You need to look for running backs. You need to make sure that you shore up that offensive line because there were part of the reason why Jameis Winston was not as successful as he could have been, which is scary. The fact that he was hanging in the pocket a lot longer than he normally does throughout his career, and he was taking sacks because of it. So that's one thing you got to look at. If you're Bruce Arians and the Bucs, don't worry about Antonio Brown. He's done. He's not coming back, and if he does, he needs to really, really prove that he can be a team guy and not be a me first and go get your brain fixed because he's got some mental health issues that really people need to be talking about.
Yeah, because given the last time we saw him, he was in a suicide vest being seen before a judge. So probably not the best image to leave in people's minds when you're having to try and regain your career in any kind of way. So, yeah, I have to agree. I don't think Antonio Brown ends up in a Bucs uniform whatsoever, as well as the fact I don't believe he should be in the NFL either until he's able to get himself some kind of realistic help and able to actually prove in any kind of capacity that he's a human. However, by then it could be too little too late. So, yeah, I don't see it really happening. But the big question, and we got to do this quick because we only got a minute left in this segment, is where do you think the Buccaneers can ultimately – what do you think they can ultimately achieve this upcoming season with Tom Brady?
Well, I think they're automatically in the running for the NFC South title. I mean, I think they're going to be up there with New Orleans. I mean, look at what Carolina's doing. Huge step back and a first-year coach with Matt Rule. Not expecting big things out of them. Atlanta, high hopes every year. They always fall short. So they're a team that's going to be in there in the mix, but I don't think I'd expect much out of them either. They lost some weapons. Their defense is getting older. I don't think any of that's going to come to fruition. So it's really going to, in my opinion, come down to a two-horse race, Buccaneers and the Saints. Saints being the front runner. They just keep reloading every year.
This is very true, very true. And I have to absolutely agree. I feel like Tampa Bay is going to be able not only to take this division, but now that's opening up with more seeds into the playoffs. I think Tampa Bay honestly has a really good fast track no matter where they land in this lineup to be able to push themselves forward and be able to push themselves possibly all the way to maybe an NFC Championship game berth, maybe even a Super Bowl berth. But we'll definitely see what happens come then. And, of course, the buzzer just
Yeah,
hits. That's right.
Without looking at their schedule, they were 7-9 last year. 11-win season.
Ooh, he's saying 11. I could definitely see that. I'm going to say at least 10, but we'll definitely see come next season. But one guy who's going to need to try and find some work kind of fast if he wants to have any kind of a season, and that's one Cam Newton. Now, this entire I don't even know what saga with him, I guess you could say, when it started with the injuries and him being out, and Kyle Allen stepping in, and then, Cam Newton's might come back, and then he stays out, and all this coming off the heels of him being a NFL MVP and having a Super Bowl berth. Now Cam Newton's been released by the Carolina Panthers, obviously in favor of another quarterback, which we'll talk about later. But what is going on with Cam Newton at this point?
Cam Newton cares more about his fashion sense than he does his performance on the football field. That's the first and foremost thing.
Ouch.
Right there. But from the Panthers standpoint, this makes sense. You got a brand new head coach, and by releasing Newton, they saved over $19 million with only $2 million being in dead money against the cap this year. So it makes sense. Plus, with all the quarterbacks you've got coming up in this draft, it only makes sense to just turn the page. Mm-hmm. You've already or let go of a lot of players from that last team. And George DeMoya hopping in here. What's going on, George? Florida Podcast Network. Cam's IG video, I think, he's in a weird spot right now. Of course, he does what he's going to do. He blames everybody else for his problems, and he doesn't look inward, and he only cares about he only cares about his ego, and he's only caring about how does he look on camera, doesn't care about on the field. If he did, he would not have fallen off the face of the earth since 2016.
Yeah, but the big thing I feel like with him is that at one point he was a really great quarterback. He set the rookie rushing and passing records on his way to winning the 2011 NFL Rookie of the Year award, and then ended up going on to be able to have some success with, honestly, not the best in players at wide receiver. Honestly, what do you have? Kelvin Benjamin, which is kind of just a big Oprah you see running up and down the field. Like, come on now. Like, what did he really have that was going to be productive for him as receiving help other than Greg Olsen? So, I really don't feel they even gave him the necessary weapons, and they still were able to take that with a good defense and get it all the way to a 15-1 record in a Super Bowl berth in Super Bowl 50 against the Denver Broncos, which they obviously lost, but since then the wheels have started coming off the bus. And I don't know if it's more so issues with Cam Newton or if it's more so the issues that were going on in the front office and with the coaching staff and with ownership with the Carolina Panthers, but I don't feel we can say this is all on Cam Newton for how a lot of this has worked out, because let's remember the past two seasons, since that Super Bowl loss, they've been just shipping players out left and right. Even their star defensive player, Luke Kuechly, ended up retiring after this last season. So this whole team is just kind of fallen apart. And honestly, I think it's more on ownership that this has happened.
Yeah, they didn't do themselves any favors. I mean, you don't have any, as you mentioned, there's no wide receivers in that on that offense that have been able to help him. But the one thing about Cam Newton, you already mentioned that he set the rookie record for rushing yards, passing yards. Mm-hmm. Remember what kind of a quarterback he has been when he's successful. He's able to use his arm and his legs. Now, as you know, his shoulder injury has really kind of hampered him the last couple of years. But looking at, like, if he's not able to be effective running the football, he's not going to be an effective passer. Because if you look at his completion percentages, he is only 3 times in his career. And now let's just say, 3 times, and that's it, where he's actually gotten over 60% passing. Mm-hmm. Every other season it's been under 50 or under 60%, which is
true.
If he was not the number 1 pick, he would have already been out of the NFL in 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. He never even would have got to that MVP championship level because of how bad of a passer he actually is.
I don't even know if that's all necessarily him just being a bad passer, because like I said earlier, you got to look at the crop of receivers he's had. The best guy he's had has been what? Kelvin Benjamin and Devin Funchess. Like, really? Those aren't really top flight wide receivers. And, when you're looking at other teams who have guys like, oh my gosh, OBJ, or where you want to look at Alshon Jeffrey, or you want to look at guys who've been able to have Antonio Brown or be able to actually have good receivers. Carolina's never been in that echelon of having good pass catchers. So I feel that some of it, like I said, falls on those players because there was a lot of drops, a lot of bad routes that were run. Sure, some of it did fall on Cam Newton with some bad overthrows, some wrong reads, but I feel that the numbers still are able to justify that he was a good quarterback. The completion percentage, sure, but I think a lot of that falls more on what he had for wide receiver help.
I will counter argument with one name and one name only,
All
who
right.
has done a lot more with just as much talent at receiver. Oh, and we already just talked about him, Tom Brady.
Yeah, but
Tom
that didn't
Brady
work
had-
into a Super Bowl for him this past year.
Right, but Tom Brady has done a lot with no wide receiver help. Look at all the receivers he's had. Okay, Julian Edelman, who's been a very solid wide receiver, but he's not the names that you just listed. He's a guy who comes up big in the playoffs. But now, yeah, I agree. Cam Newton has not had any of that. But he does have one Christian McCaffrey.
This is true.
He did have Greg Olsen for Lord knows how long. Greg
Also
Olsen's
true.
been a top 10 tight end. Like, I understand where that comes from, but watching the film of Cam Newton, how many times have you watched that game, a game with Carolina and Cam Newton being on the field, and you just look and go, where was that throw going? Either the timing's not right with his receivers, or he just makes a bad read, or he hasn't. How many overthrows do you see out of Cam Newton?
Very
a lot.
true. Very true.
That's what I look at. I know you like the stats, so I had to throw the stats at you. But just by watching, yes, I'm a couch coach, right? Everybody's a couch coach. But you got to watch. If you watch the film and you look at it and you're like, where was that going? But man, that was a bad overthrow. If you start seeing stuff like that, it doesn't matter. Like I'll just go back to what I said. If he wasn't the first overall pick, he would have already been out of the NFL.
Yeah, very quite possibly. But the big question now is, where does Cam Newton land? A lot of guys have already been snapping up quarterbacks left and right, even some big moves, which we'll talk about in our next segment. But now with a lot of dwindling options, where does Cam Newton realistically land?
That's a good question because there's not a lot of teams out there, like you mentioned, that are looking for quarterbacks. But the one that pops out to me is the LA Chargers. I mean, they've moved on from Phillip Rivers. They've decided to keep Tyrod Taylor and roll with him. But if you look at those two players, they are similar style of players. And the Chargers went out, they re-signed Eckler. They went out and got a few other pieces to go along with him, which we'll go over those in a second. But I think Cam Newton is probably the best fit at LA with the Chargers right now. I don't see any other team that would be willing to, just move aside their starting quarterback or any team that would want to take him on is probably not in a position to win right now. And I know Cam Newton probably cares a little bit about that. Plus, Cam Newton loves his image. So what better place to go talk about your image and be in the best spot than LA?
Honestly, I'd have to agree, but another team that you sadly have to look at is New England. They are quarterback starved. They just signed Brian Hoyer. Like, what kind of signing is that? Obviously, you're not going to try and run with Brian Hoyer as your starter for the year. So I think you still have to include New England in any kind of quarterback talk right now, because I have a feeling they're going to end up with a very loaded quarterback room until Bill Belichick can figure out what exactly he wants to do at quarterback. Because given how things ended up working out with Tom Brady and his departure for New England, they need all the help they can get. And you still have guys like Cam Newton and Jameis Winston and these other guys that are out there. So don't be surprised if you see New England snatch one of these guys up.
I can already tell you what New England's going to do. First of all, New England and Cam Newton, no, that does not work. That Cam Newton and Bill Belichick, that marriage would not last. I don't think so. They brought in Brian Hoyer, but they brought him for a veteran locker room presence. Don't forget, they got Jared Stidham. Jared Stidham's a guy that they went, he's not a first round pick, but
he's unproven.
If you look at, he didn't play too bad in the preseason.
That's preseason.
Don't forget, how many quarterbacks are coming up in the draft this year?
You're talking about practice.
Yeah, practice. What's the old adage? practice makes perfect, right?
Right, but we'll definitely see how
But
a lot of it works out because, like you said, the draft could end up being a viable option if they go that route and try and snap up a quarterback. But they are a little bit further down the draft list, so we'll definitely have to see. They might try and move up. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But we're gonna go ahead and move on to a little bit of NFL free agency, and it was active. It's been wild. Obviously, we saw Tom Brady end up moving on and being signed by the Tampa Bay Bucks, but there's a lot of other teams and a lot of other action that's been happening, including this first one, which is, to me, the biggest head scratcher, and that it was with the Arizona Cardinals trading to acquire Texans wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins and giving up running back David Johnson, and also an exchange of picks. This, honestly, for Arizona, I feel was a huge win, but what are the Texans doing?
Bill O'Brien should have been fired a while ago, but he's doing exactly what he wants to do. He is sabotaging this team so bad, so that way when they do in fact fire him, whoever comes in after him has no chance of succeeding whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely seems that way because they've been in like ultimate tank mode. And when you go from replacing DeAndre Hopkins with Randall Cobb, I think you definitely have downgraded. The Arizona Cardinals, though, did go out and get a linebacker as well in Devon Kennard. But there's been a lot of big moves. Atlanta Falcons ended up moving on from Austin Hooper, ended up getting tight end Hayden Hurst from the Baltimore Ravens for a series of picks. They also were able to sign Todd Gurley, which was a huge pickup for them on a 1-year, $6 million deal, and also got edge rusher Dante Fowler Jr. on a 3-year, $48 million deal. I mean, you might have to actually look at Atlanta a little bit going into the season.
I got my hopes up on Atlanta last year because of all the stuff that they did. They still had pieces left over, and I incorrectly predicted that they would be in conversation for the NFC South. They completely tanked, but that's what the Atlanta Falcons do, is the years that you think they're going to be great, they are horrible. And the years you think they're going to be horrible, they end up being great. So Atlanta, I don't know what to make of them. I like the moves that they've made because they had to replace Austin Hooper. Todd Gurley, if he stays healthy, he's still a pretty good running back in the NFL. And then Dante Fowler Jr., he had moved on from Jacksonville because he was a dud there. And the LA Rams, he played very well. So now it's going to be realistic. I think he's going to could potentially be a big signing because they did lose Vic Beasley, by the way.
This is
so
true.
That's going to be a to fill.
Yeah, it definitely could be. It'll definitely be interesting to see how a lot of that works out. But looking at some of these other teams, the Baltimore Ravens also been making some moves and were able to get defensive end Elias Campbell from the Jacksonville Jaguars for a 2020 5th-round pick, and they're currently finalizing a 2-year deal with him, as well as signing defensive end Derek Wolfe. And let's not forget, the Baltimore Ravens kind of had a little exodus when it came to their defensive line, so they're really trying to reload. And honestly, I don't think they've done a bad job so far.
Yeah, they lost Chris Wormley too. We'll talk about him in a second, but they're not doing too bad. I mean, picking up Calais Campbell is a very big move. And when we get to the Jags, I'm going to really kind of dive into that a second. But Baltimore Ravens, that's a good move. That's a great move to only give up a 5th-round pick to get Calais Campbell, who is the mayor of Saxonville, and no more. He's taking his talents to Baltimore.
Yeah, definitely a great move. And then you also look at the Buffalo Bills, who made a huge trade with the Minnesota Vikings and landing wide receiver Stephon Diggs for 4 picks, a 1st-round, 5th-round, and a 6th-round, and a 4th-rounder next season. So definitely huge. And signed cornerback Josh Norman on a 1-year deal. Buffalo Bills trying to get the win, but are they giving up too much?
Well, I mean, when you need to get a weapon for Josh Allen, this is what you have to do sometimes. I'm really surprised, though, that the Minnesota Vikings got that much in return for Stephon Diggs, and the Houston Texans got nothing in return for one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and DeAndre Hopkins. So
yeah,
I'm a very, very big head scratcher there. But yeah, I think the Bills, they know with Tom Brady gone from New England, they know this is their year. You have to go all in. And I guarantee you, as soon as they knew Tom Brady was not going to come back to New England, they said, we got to make a huge splash, and we have to do it now. This is a great move for the Buffalo Bills. And I think to see how the rest of the offseason and the draft plays out, but I think the Bills are in a great position to finally take the AFC East.
Definitely. And then we're going to have to kind of speed through some of this. We only got so much time, but the Carolina Panthers ended up trading their traded their offensive guard, Trey Turner, for left tackle Russell Okung from the LA Chargers. A big move to try and bolster their offensive line and protect the blind side for their newest series of quarterbacks, including Teddy Bridgewater, which was a huge signing for the Panthers, as well as XFL quarterback standout PJ Walker, and ended up also picking up linebacker Tahir Whitehead and wide receiver Robbie Anderson. What do you think about PJ Walker and Teddy Bridgewater both landing with the Panthers?
Well, when you got to replace Cam Newton, you got to find a quarterback that's going to do it. Teddy Bridgewater did a great job. PJ Walker probably would have been the MVP of the XFL. Great moves there. Tahir Whitehead is a really underrated pick because you got to replace Kuechly. Whitehead has been the leading tackler for the Raiders last couple years. Great moves there.
Yeah, absolutely. Have to agree.
Chicago Bears took quarterback Nick Foles away from the Jacksonville Jaguars, went and got Jimmy Graham and Robert Quinn. Overpaid for Robert Quinn, but Jimmy Graham, I mean, they're just trying to fill holes right now. I don't like what they're doing.
Yeah, you go and get quarterback Nick Foles in that ridiculous contract after he breaks his clavicle and was out most of last season. I think is a head-scratching move, and what kind of leaves in question everything with Mitchell Trubisky. So definitely going to see how that works out. Cleveland Browns, though, went out and signed offensive tackle Jack Conklin on a 3-year deal and tight end Austin Hooper on a 4-year deal, and also picked up quarterback Case Keenum to add a little bit of depth behind their current starter in Baker Mayfield. What do you think about this?
I love this move. Jack Conklin is a big under the radar signing there. I love that move. Austin Hooper, David Njoku has been hurt. He's been underperforming. Great move to go get Hooper. Don't be surprised if Case Keenum starts at least 5 games this year for the Cleveland Browns.
That is blasphemy, sir.
Don't be surprised.
Oh, my goodness. The Dallas Cowboys, though, ended up going out and signing safety HaHa Clinton-Dix and were able to also re-sign wide receiver Amari Cooper, being able to keep their trifecta between quarterback, running back, and wide receiver going, as well as being able to sign defensive tackles Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe, as well as kicker Greg Zuerlein.
Greg Zuerlein. Yeah, got a 3-year deal for a kicker. That is huge. A 3-year deal for a kicker. I like the combo of McCoy and Poe right there on the defensive line. Now they got to worry about what are they going to do with Dak Prescott.
Yeah, now that he's been franchise tagged. So we're going to see how he's actually going to perform this year. Some players are able to do well and be able to be professional. Some guys, it just kind of bothers them. So we'll definitely see how it affects his play. Denver Broncos, though, went out and got cornerback A.J. Bowie in a trade from the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is a huge upgrade for their defense, as well as signing offensive guard Graham Glasgow and, of course, running back Melvin Gordon on a 2-year, $16 million deal. Good move?
Melvin Gordon has actually come out and said he regrets holding out. Shocker. Because now we only got a 2-year deal for $16 million. He's got to share a backfield with Philip Lindsay. Good luck with that. I think it's a great move with the Browns. Terrible move by Melvin Gordon. But that's what happens when you try to hold out and try to be the next Le'Veon Bell. You're going to get burned, and Melvin Gordon got burned.
And you know what? I think you called that was going to happen. So good on you. But
thank you.
I'm going to leave this next one to you because these are your boys.
My Detroit Lions didn't do a whole lot. There's a lot of head scratching going on. Patricia is probably going to be out after this year. Him and Bob Quinn are probably going to be out. But they went and got linebacker from the New England Patriots, Jamie Collins, got Chase Daniel and Desmond Trufant. Not big splashy moves, but the real question is going to be what are they going to do in the draft? I swear I've said it before, if they draft Tua Tagovailoa, I'm going to on air burn a Detroit Lions shirt. I'm going to do it.
Oh, dude, I'm so excited to hear that happen.
You can hold me to it. And I know George is watching here. George, you can hold me to this. I'm going to on air burn a Detroit Lions shirt if they draft and keep Tua Tagovailoa.
You heard it here first, fans. Oh, that's wild. Oh, man, I can't wait to see that happen. I'm not even going to comment on it. I just want to see that happen. Green Bay Packers ended up going out and signing wide receiver Devin Funchess, as well as offensive tackle Rick Wagner, trying to give themselves a little bit more depth along the offensive line and some kind of weapon after losing Geronimo Allison due to free agency. So Green Bay Packers, are they really doing anything here?
Under the radar picks, Rick Wagner is a big one, but he's getting older. Devin Funchess is a good red zone threat. He was a converted tight end coming out of college. It's going to be whatever. I'm not a huge fan of what the Packers are doing, but they think they're in a pretty good position to still win the NFC North. So I give them a little bit of credit.
All right, looking at the Houston Texans, they obviously made that trade for David Johnson and sent DeAndre Hopkins to Arizona, but also we're signing wide receiver Randall Cobb to team up with Kiki Kuti and, of course, Will Fuller. Do you think that this that Houston's doing anything worth. I feel like you said earlier, they're just trying to tank this.
I think Bill O'Brien is trying to put this team in a position so that when he does get fired, they're in such a bad place that they have no choice but to tear it all down, start all over again. What they haven't addressed at all, which has been the issue last year, offensive line, they still have not addressed it. Deshaun Watson got sacked the most of any quarterback the last 2 seasons, and that's the big hole they need to fill, and they're not filling it. Bill O'Brien, the hashtag fire Bill O'Brien's been all over Twitter the last couple of weeks, and I am completely on board.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's going to be interesting to see how a lot of that's going to shake out. But then we look at the Indianapolis Colts. They made the huge trade for defensive tackle DeForest Buckner from the San Francisco 49ers for just a first-round pick, and then turn around and sign quarterback Phillip Rivers and cornerback Xavier Rhodes. Huge moves by the Indianapolis Colts.
Xavier Rhodes isn't the guy he was in Minnesota, so this is going to be a really interesting move here. He's a 1-year deal, and Phillip Rivers also a 1-year deal as well, but the Colts going to get DeForest Buckner is a big deal. They really value that position because, giving up a first-round pick for it, that's huge, especially in this year when you've got all that talent. San Francisco, they're just trying to reload for another Super Bowl run.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But we look at the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know this is one you wanted to definitely talk about. They were also able to sign tight ends Tyler Eifert and linebacker Joe Schubert. But Jacksonville is trying to make little moves now that they have, I think, solidified their quarterback position.
I'm all in on the mustache. I've been on the mustache since last year. I think he was a really great story. Now it's going to be on him to go and actually take the reins of this QB1 slot. But really the question is, okay, you got rid of A.J. Boye, you got rid of Calais Campbell. You're basically getting rid of all this talent that you had on this team, and now you're going to rely on the ticket selling of the mustache. I'm not happy about where the Jaguars are going. And I don't think they're going to be very good next year. I think they're probably going to have maybe a 5-win season.
I think they could be decent. I think the defense is going to end up being their downfall given how everything is kind of shaped out. But I'm very excited for Minshew to finally get his shot as the de facto starting quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I think in a couple years' time, though, if they keep sticking with him, eventually they can rebuild this team back up through free agency and the draft and maybe eventually actually be successful with Minshew as their starter. But moving on, we're going to try and speed through some of these. We've already heard the buzzer come through, but we got the Las Vegas Raiders who made a fury of signings with quarterback Marcus Mariota, a wide receiver Nelson Aguilar who left Philadelphia, cornerback Eli Apple, defensive end Colin Nassib, tight end Jason Witten, and linebacker Corey Littleton. So many moves and signings by the Raiders.
Raiders are just trying to do what they did last year, just complete culture sweep and get the guys in that Gruden and Mayock want. And I think they're a bunch of little moves, but I think they're going to add up to something very special for the first year Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree. Definitely going to be interesting. And we also had the L.A. Chargers who ended up making signings with offensive tackle Brian Bulaga and cornerback Chris Harris Jr., which were huge pickups, I believe, for them. Definitely helps with the corner position for the Chargers as well as shoring up that offensive line.
Yeah, again, great moves. Bulaga getting up there in age. Chris Harris also getting up there in age, but Chris Harris is still one of the better corners in the league. And the Chargers, they're trying to have a bounce-back year. Now with no Melvin Gordon, no Phillip Rivers, going to be a really big year of, I think, a lot of uncertainty surrounding the LA Chargers.
Yeah, we'll definitely see what happens with that. The Miami Dolphins, though, have been on a flurry themselves, signing offensive tackle Eric Flowers, running back Jordan Howard, cornerback Byron Jones, edge rusher Shaq Lawson, edge rusher Emmanuel Ogba, and linebacker Kyle Van Noy. I tell you what, this team looks like a completely different team now.
I love what the Dolphins are doing. I mean, Eric Flowers, not a bad tackle. He did okay at the Giants, but not great. I like the Jordan Howard move, the Jones move. Shaq Lawson is a huge move for me, especially with pairing him with Kyle Van Noy. These moves right here, watch out for the Dolphins. They're going to maybe win a couple more games this year.
At least a couple. Can't do too much worse. But the New England Patriots, like we said earlier, went out and got Brian Hoyer. Haven't made very much of any other moves at all. What are they waiting on?
Well, you know what Bill Belichick does best? He likes to use the draft to help. They're not big on free agency signings, but they re-signed a lot of guys, which we didn't list, but they re-signed a lot of guys. They like to build through the draft. I have no doubt that the Patriots are going to probably go out, get a quarterback. They're going to bring in, start Hoyer for the first few weeks, then Stidham for the rest of the way. New England's still going to be in the conversation for the AFC East title.
Oof, that's so crazy to say, even with all the quarterback stuff going on. The New Orleans Saints also were able to sign safety Malcolm Jenkins and wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders, as well as re-signing Drew Brees, which was a huge, huge get back for them. New England Saints going to make another run, maybe lose to the Vikings again in the playoffs?
The Saints, yeah, they keep retooling every single year. I love the moves of Malcolm Jenkins and Emmanuel Sanders, but they can't, for whatever reason, get over that hump in the playoffs. And I think they'll probably win the division again. It'll be a tight one with Tampa Bay, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll definitely see what happens. It's going to be interesting to see how all that could shake out for them yet again. Of course, we've talked about where are we at this point? Philadelphia Eagles made a huge trade. Yes, that's right. For quarterback Darius Slay from your Detroit Lions for a 3rd and 5th round pick in the upcoming draft. I think that was a huge help they needed after they lost Malcolm Jenkins and then moved Jalen Mills from corner to safety. So definitely a lot of help that they needed, as well as being able to sign nose tackle Javon Hargrave and quarterback nickel Robbie Coleman. So definitely trying to round out that defense. So we'll definitely see what happens. But a little quiet thing that happened. The Philadelphia Eagles did pick up the 4th-year option on Zach Ertz's contract. So Zach Ertz definitely tied up and will be with the Eagles.
I think the Javon Hargrave move was great. I really like that move. They really needed to shore up that defensive line. I like it better than the Darius Slay move. Darius Slay was a great contributor for the Lions, but he really slipped the last year or two. So it's time for him to move on. Wish him all the best. And
We'll see what happens.
Yeah,
with
I think I think the Eagles made some great moves this offseason so far.
Yeah, they definitely did, and we'll definitely see how it shapes up. They need to definitely find some wide receiver help. That's their biggest thing, and they've already said that they plan on going young in the draft and trying to find some new talent to pair with Carson Wentz. We'll see how it works out. The Pittsburgh Steelers have made a huge trade for defensive tackle Chris Wormley from the Baltimore Ravens for a 2021 5th-round pick. I think they honestly got a steal in this, as well as being able to sign tight end Eric Ebron.
Yeah, Eric Dick Hands Ebron. Pittsburgh fans, get ready because this man is going to drop so many important passes for you this year. You're going to hate him by the end of the year.
Gotta love it. The Seattle Seahawks went out and got edge rusher Bruce Irvin, but been able to retain a lot of their actual roster. What do you think about their move?
Retaining a lot of roster is really what they've been trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And Bruce Irvin, not a bad pickup, but really going to be intrigued to see what they do moving forward going into the draft.
Yeah, definitely going to be interesting. Tennessee Titans, though, went out and got edge rusher Vic Beasley, which I think is a huge, 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 huge move for them.
Yeah, that's a big move for them. It's Vic Beasley, coming from Atlanta, that with already paired with that defense.
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee's going to be in a really good position, especially with Jacksonville falling off. Houston, you don't know what you're going to get out of them. And then Indianapolis Colts, you don't know what kind of year they're going to have either. So the door is wide open for Tennessee to take this division.
Yes, especially after they were able to re-sign Ryan Tannehill. And, of course, they still have Derrick Henry on franchise tag. So able to return a lot of that offense as well. So it definitely could be really good. Tampa Bay, we already touched on with Tom Brady and haven't done really much of anything else. I think right now they're just trying to field calls for players that want to play with Tom Brady. So I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of things probably in the coming weeks leading up to the draft dealing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
And the last team, the Washington Redskins, they traded for Kyle Allen. This kind of makes sense because Ron Rivera had worked with him in Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
They got rid of him, got rid of a 5th-round pick to get him. Then a few under the radar signings: Peyton Barber, running back, cornerback Ronald Darby, and then 37-year-old linebacker Thomas Davis.
Yeah,
that one's a bit of a head scratcher for me because I know he's a beast, but dude's 37 years old, and it's not like a quarterback where you can play into your 40s. Linebacker is a really tough position to be playing in your late 30s.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely tough to be playing that late into your age. It's definitely a head scratcher for sure. But hey, it's the Redskins. Why are you shocked? But out of all of this, what are your best and worst moves?
Man, best moves I think as a whole have to go to the Dolphins. I mean, what they've done, they've went out and got a bunch of people that they needed, and I think they're doing it a pretty good way. They know they weren't going to be good for the last year or two, and they've kind of openly said that. But I think they're building it the right way, and if they go out and get Tua Tagovailoa in the draft, then they really have something to stand on. But it really depends on how good do they think Tua is going to be. I've always been on the train of not thinking Tua is really that great of a quarterback, but hey, I'm waiting to be proven wrong.
Well, the big thing with the Dolphins is they have been rumored to have been cooling on Tua, so it's going to be interesting how a lot of that plays out. All right, but my best,
and one of the worst moves. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, my best, honestly, I'd have to agree, though, would also be the Dolphins. As long as the Dolphins keep making the right moves that they need to and shoring up the offense, shoring up the defense, the Dolphins honestly could be a team to really look out for to win that division next season, especially because even though the Patriots were able to re-sign a number of players, there are some that they lost, and the biggest one obviously being Tom Brady. So I feel the Patriots are going to take a step back and could open the doorway if the Dolphins keep making the correct moves, shoring up that defense, which they definitely have at this point, and then just trying to find an answer that's better than, say, Josh Rosen or Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback. So if the Dolphins keep things going, they could be a team that could possibly win the AFC East.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to be a good thing here. We had a question a few minutes ago from George asking who is the best free agent that's still available and where does he go. Looking at the top 100 from NFL.com, couple of people that are on this list. You got Jadeveon Clowney, Cam Newton, Jameis Winston. Let's see who else. I mean, I don't think you have to go any further than that because I think Jadeveon Clowney is the best guy still out there. Where does he go? Man, I don't know because I think he would have already been signed by now.
Mm-hmm. I honestly have to agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree. Jadeveon Clowney is way too disruptive of a defender. He even took Carson Wentz out of their playoff game last season when he was still playing for Seattle. So the guy is just a beast, and he don't care who you are. He'll run right through you, and that's the kind of engine and tenacity you need on a defense. Where he could go, though, is anyone's guess. It really comes down to the thing with Jadeveon Clowney is not that he's like, say, Ndamukong Suh level, but he's starting to develop his own personality and attitude. And some teams I think have been kind of shying away from that a little bit. So there's a number of teams, honestly, that might try to take a chance on him. Some might not. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
I could see him going to a team that is in position to win a Super Bowl. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him go to like Baltimore Ravens or something like that. A team that has lost some talent on the defensive line could definitely use him. That kind of a personality to pair with guys like Mark Ingram and Lamar Jackson, and I think that'd be a really good fit.
Philadelphia Eagles? Maybe? No?
Of course you'd say that.
No, not me. But either way, though, what are your worst signing? What are your worst moves for this free agency?
The worst signing, I think, has to go. I think it has to go with the Chicago Bears. I mean, not because of the fact they went and got overpaid for Robert Quinn and then went and got a past his prime Jimmy Graham, but I think the move to get Nick Foles, it tells the locker room and the fan base of Chicago that, we really don't think Mitchell Trubisky is the guy moving forward. So we want to get some insurance just in case if he does really struggle again, because you saw what Chase Daniel had to do last year in relief of Mitchell Trubisky. And I thought that was one of the biggest head-scratching moves ever, to trade up one spot, give up the farm to get a guy that you could have gotten and who's not really that good. But I think that's the biggest head-scratcher, because you're telling Trubisky that, we like you, but we don't really think you're the guy.
Yeah, to try to put that pressure in that locker room. And I could definitely see that. But honestly, for worst moves this offseason, I have to go with the Houston Texans. You ended up letting possibly the best wide receiver there is right now, DeAndre Hopkins, go and trade him for a busted running back in David Johnson, who has not been really that productive the past couple of years. And what did you really get in return? Not a whole lot. You ended up going and giving up let me find the freaking notes here. It's just so mind-boggling. They ended up giving up they swapped fourth rounders and gave up another pick. It didn't make sense for what they ended up doing. You didn't get anything back, I feel, that was good enough for DeAndre Hopkins. And then they go and sign Randall Cobb. So it just doesn't make sense. Bill O'Brien is completely tanking the Houston Texans. He's going to leave a destroyed cupboard when he gets fired by this team. Let's get honest here. And it's not going to end up working out very well for the Texans in the short term. However, if ownership finally figures out that, hey, we need a real GM and not this guy who's trying to be our head coach and GM, maybe we can actually do something, and then they can actually start a rebuild process. But I feel right now they are wasting Deshaun Watson's best years.
Absolutely. You're wasting this guy on a rookie contract. He's going to get a little bit better, but these are the best years right now, and I completely agree. They're completely wasting it. They're not getting him any help, really. They're actually taking away help. Mm-hmm. And, again, that offensive line, they still haven't addressed that. That's going to be their biggest question mark. I wouldn't be surprised to see Deshaun Watson lead the league in sacks taken yet again.
And then you're going to end up seeing Deshaun Watson moving on to another team. So at this point, though, we're going to go ahead and shift gears real quick. Huh?
New England Patriots?
Oh, my gosh. How dare you say that? But sadly, yes, I could see that.
That would be great.
But moving on, we're going to touch a little bit on the collective bargaining agreement that finally got passed and ratified. We know it's been a little bit since it's got signed, but hey, guys, come on. We've been on hiatus. There's a pandemic going on. Think of people. Jeez. Anyways, the NFL Players Association voted and passed the proposed CBA back in February after being passed by the owners, and then it was put to a players' vote, which ended up being passed and ratified on a 1,019 to 959 vote. So definitely very, very interesting that this did pass, given how many high-profile players were extremely vocal against this CBA. Now, with this CBA, though, we are going to have a new playoff format that's going to include 7 teams per conference and only the first seed getting a first-round bye. So definitely going to be interesting. That's going to give us 6 wild card weekend games, and it's going to add a lot more football, a lot more intrigue, especially when we see teams like my Philadelphia Eagles going 9-7 and winning their division. So we might even see 8-8, 7-9 teams getting in. Who knows? But then the season after in between 2021 and 2023, let me English today, we will be adding a 17th game to the schedule for every team. So definitely going to be very intriguing how a lot of this plays out. What do you think about the players actually passing the CBA?
There's a lot to chew on there. The first thing, I like the fact that we're adding another playoff team, not because of the fact that we're just adding it, but look at how many teams missed out on the playoffs that should have been in. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of 8-8 teams unless they're division winners get in to the playoffs. But I think you're going to see a lot of teams that got left out that still had 10 wins, 10 wins, 11 wins that are getting left out to finally get in the field. I really like that move. The big question, or the big shocker to me out of all this, is because this is such a defining CBA negotiation for the players. Mm-hmm. Under 80% of the players voted on this CBA. 79.1% of players voted. That, to me, shows that a lot of at least a section of these guys really don't give a crap about this. They're not thinking about this long term. They're literally just thinking about right here and right now, and how's my paycheck right now in this year. They're not thinking about long term, which I think is from a players association standpoint, it's very alarming moving forward in future negotiations.
Well, the big thing that I see here is that while you do see a lot of the high-profile players like the Aaron Rodgers who are speaking out against this of the world, but the thing is that most of the NFL is made up of what is considered the lower class of the NFL player, and that is guys that are making barely $1 million a year, if that. So a lot of these guys are just trying to make sure they have some type of longevity because they're not getting the $50, $60, $70 million contracts you see some of these guys making, or even $100 and $200 million contracts. They're not making anything like that. They're making bare minimum money to play in the NFL for the game they love, so they have to be able to make sure that they're protecting their interest, given the whole CTE issue that's been happening, and now we're going through a pandemic where none of these guys are going to make money if this were to last into the season. So it ends up putting guys like that in jeopardy, and sadly, that demographic makes up the majority of the NFL. So I'm not surprised to see this pass the way it did. And yes, in the short term, it does seem that way, that it's just for a short-term financial gain. However, on the back end of it is what's really important, because that has more. They have expanded in the CBA more benefits for current and retired players for their health benefits. So if they end up, say, with an issue with CTE, now they're able to seek the help and have it covered the way they need to by the NFL.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things they had to really kind of give up a few things to get that stuff that you just talked about.
Yeah.
Adding the 17th game, so many players did not want it.
No, they
but
didn't.
You've seen it on Twitter all over there that players on either side have been, showing their praise or showing their disappointment for either side of the argument. I think the big one, I don't know if you mentioned this yet, but they were talking about removing pot as a banned substance.
Oh, yes. I have not mentioned that yet, but they are removing that to try and make it easier, which I'm sure will help guys like Josh Gordon. And, hey, if Ricky Williams was still wanting to play, I'm sure he'd get back in. But huge move, honestly, for them to remove that from the banned list.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you've got it's such a change now with things across America that marijuana is becoming more of a recreational thing instead of it's not the drug that everyone made it out to be back in World War I, World War II days.
The
that
reefer
we're
madness.
still basing all of our assumptions about drugs on, but we don't need to get into that. But I think for guys like Josh Gordon and other guys that have these debilitating issues that can be alleviated with medical marijuana and stuff like that, I think this gives guys a little bit more of the freedom to go explore those opportunities instead of worrying about the pills and the drugs and stuff that the team doctors give them.
Right. And it definitely could be a lot better, especially with the recovery, because obviously it's not helping anybody play any better. If anything, it's going to make you play worse. So at the end of the day, I think it's finally a good move. And they also lessened that window for drug testing, where it used to be I believe it was a 2 or 3 month window before the season started where they could drug test players at will. Some guys were even complaining that, like Eric Reed, who were getting tested almost bi-weekly, it seemed like. But now they've lessened that window down to a 2-week window before the season to try and make it more realistic for the players and not try and really keep them under the grind of drug testing all the time. So I think definitely a good move all the way around in the CBA for that.
Absolutely. Well, I guess let's move on here. Let's talk about of course, everything that everyone's dealing with right now. Talk about the coronavirus and the effects that we've seen locally here in just outside of Orlando, Florida. And I know Orlando went on lockdown Thursday night.
Mm-hmm.
We have not seen the lockdown effects going on, but across the country, places are getting shut down. Places are going on lockdown, and the country is slowly kind of just feeling these effects. And I said this at the beginning of all this, not on air, but I said this was in a conversation with somebody. This pandemic is going to cause more bankruptcies than it will deaths.
I absolutely agree with that, because everything is shut down, Luckily for us with Podcast City Network and all its illustrious awesomeness is that at the end of the day, we're in a digital medium, so we ain't got to worry about things like that. But it's been very, very devastating for a lot of businesses, a lot of industries, including our day jobs, which is crazy unto itself. So it's just crazy, though, to also see how much this has spread worldwide. We ended up starting with such a small amount of cases, and now we're well over 500,000, almost about to touch 1 million, I believe. So it's getting just absolutely crazy to see how this has progressed and utterly shut down sports.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think part of the reason why you're seeing this big jump in a lot of these numbers is because of the fact we, at least for us as a country, we don't have the access to testing because we have, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole, but we've got a very, very awful medical system here in the country, and that needs to be fixed. But I mean, that's part of the reason why you're starting to see these numbers jump up, because people are actually starting to get tested. And the numbers are going to keep climbing. But as you mentioned, that across the world, China and Japan have actually started to normalize, go back down. And Italy's kind of seen a little bit of a drop. But these countries have also been on complete lockdown for a couple of weeks. that social distancing actually helps. So if you're watching this, all of the 10 or 11 people, we've had up to about 30 people watching today. So far, thank you. We appreciate
Thank you guys
that.
so much for supporting Final
Keep
Score.
your distance. Yeah, keep your distance. Stay at home. Don't leave unless you have to. Let's kick this thing in the ass as fast as we can so we can all get back to normal life and get back to, hell, we can get back to sports finally.
Sports. I feel like, I've been doing exciting things recently to keep me entertained, though, like watching water droplets race each other and, betting on the weather. But I need sports back. It's bad.
My favorite thing was the guy who did the little sand race trail with marbles.
Yes, that's the best.
And then he said, it was on Twitter that he said, I want to see Joe Buck commentate this. And Joe Buck has been, I give him credit. He's not my favorite announcer, but I love the fact that he's taking regular videos on Twitter and commentating on them. And it has been gold. I love it.
Now, the big thing, though, that we have to ask ourselves with all of this, because we even recently received news that the Olympics are being affected. They're now postponing the Olympics until next year. But before we talk about the Olympics, are we going to see sports back this season?
Depends on the sport. I think baseball, yes. Hockey, basketball, I don't think so. I think we're going to get to a point where they're going to get to the end of the regular season and they're just going to say, hey, look, we're going to shorten the season. Everybody, kind of get better. They're not just going to stop now and then start the playoffs just out of nowhere. I don't think that's going to happen because we got this extension for social distancing until the end of April. Mm-hmm. That's when you start seeing playoffs happening. So I don't think we're going to see NBA this year. I don't think we're going to see the NHL this year. Baseball, yes, but not until like June, really.
Mm-hmm. I could see a lot of that happening. I know there's also been a lot of speculation that possibly they could just start in the playoffs when it came to NBA, but honestly, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that hockey's done, basketball is done, baseball, I agree. I don't think it's going to end up starting until this summer. But the biggest thing I know a lot of people worry about is how this will affect fall sports, basically football and the start of the next basketball season. Also, you have NASCAR still trying to run. I think NASCAR might end up returning, but run a limited schedule, which we also have more on what NASCAR is doing in the meantime later. Really great stuff. But I don't think football will be affected. Obviously, we had spring games for college get canceled. I think part of the preseason might get delayed or even canceled for the NFL, maybe if it ends up stretching. But don't think regular season will end up being affected. You might end up seeing there's a college teams already talking about running with no fans in the stadium, which I think would be a economic disaster, honestly, for teams if they were to do that. But I don't think it's going to go that far. I think we'll end up getting back to normal for football season. But the big thing with the NBA I want to mention is that I feel for them to be able to keep even their league calendar correct, they're going to have to cancel the season if they want to start this October. There's no way they're going to be able to try and extend the season, play it into like August or September and expect to take a few weeks off and then turn around and do it all again. It's not going to happen. So definitely going to be interesting how a lot of that might play out, but NBA is going to be the one to watch out for.
Yeah, and George comments, don't you dare say hockey is done. I'm sorry, George. I'm
a Flyers fan, and we were rebounding. Come on. I feel you.
I think the NHL's done, but I think what you mentioned is the fall sports are not going to be canceled. I'm really going to be intrigued to see because OTAs and stuff are starting or supposed to be starting in I think it was May, right?
Right. So you're going to see a lot of that
OTAs
not
are
happening.
supposed to start in May. So if those get pushed back, yeah, I could see them shortening the preseason, but if the NFL, if this thing stretches into April, May even, I could see a delayed start for the NFL. Maybe not week 1, but they're going to delay the practices. Then they're going to delay, cut off some of the preseason games, and then still get everything started on schedule. But yeah, all the other sports, I think golf is done for quite a while. If colleges decide to run without fans, first of all, that's dumb because look at how many players are on the sideline with each other.
Just saying.
Look how many players are on the sideline. All the coaches are on the sideline. That would be stupid because it just but that's the NCAA. They don't put their athletes, their student athletes, and their coaches first. They only care about the dollars. They only care about the advertising revenue. They only
TV
care about the
contracts.
TV contract.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's all they care about. So I would not be surprised if NCAA does something stupid like that and puts more people's lives in danger.
Yeah, but we'll definitely see how that plays out. And obviously, we got to make it through spring and into summer to see even what's going to happen with that. So obviously, there's still some time to figure that out. But before our buzzer goes off here in about 3 minutes, we got to talk about the Olympics. Now, the Olympics have been officially postponed for the Tokyo Olympics until next year in 2021. They just officially announced the dates, which will be July 23rd through August 8th of 2021. Now, the Olympics have only canceled 3 times in history, both of which were during the World Wars. World War I in 1916 and during World War II in 1940 and 1944. So obviously, you know, we are dealing with a pandemic, but they were not going to cancel the Olympics. The Olympics have rarely ever been postponed and marched on through all kinds of events. What kind of events were you able to find out about that?
Well, I'll do a little bit of research because I was really intrigued by this. And, you know, they have gone through so much where whether it's political unrest or just terrorism or, you know, anything like that, they've still done the Olympics. So there's 3 other times that they've actually either postponed or have gone through things that they probably shouldn't have gone through. The first one was in 1968, just 10 days before the Summer Games in Mexico City. It's an event where the Mexican government forces opened fire on protesters, unarmed student protesters, killing hundreds, if not thousands of people in crowds. And it was called the Tlatelolco Massacre. They still did the Olympics through that. Like that, to me, that is one thing that's, oh, wow, like, why would you do something like that when you have a government that's hosting your event? Why would you still give them that opportunity? But then the second one is in 1972. They had an armed band of Palestinian terrorists that attacked the Israeli compound at the Olympic Village in Munich, Germany, killing 2 Israeli athletes and holding 9 others hostage. In the ensuing standoff, all 9 remaining Israeli athletes were murdered. Instead of calling off the Munich Games, the Olympic officials continued the competition after a 2-day suspension. That's it. You're talking about your own athletes that represent your event get murdered by terrorists, and they go, you know what? Take 2 days off. Just rub some dirt on it. 2 days off. We got this. Like that's what the Olympics is almost as bad as the NCAA, actually, if not worse. The third one actually happened here in the U.S. 1996. If you've been alive for that, you remember the Atlanta Games.
Kurt Angle.
The Atlanta Summer Games, where they were allowed to go on after a homemade bomb was exploded during a free concert in Centennial Olympic Park. 2 people died in the early morning blast, and more than 100 people were injured. But only a few hours later, the president of Atlanta's Olympic Organization Committee said this, and I quote, "The spirit of the Olympic movement mandates that we continue."
Oh, my gosh. Absolutely ridiculous.
Terrorism in different forms in 3 different Olympic events, and they went, no, we're good.
Oh my goodness, absolutely crazy. But we will still have the Olympics. The Olympics are not being canceled, so we will have them next year. If anything else happens by or is announced by the IOC, or we get any more information about the Olympics, we'll definitely let you know. And that was Buzzer you just heard. So with that, we're going to go ahead and move on now to sports history.
Sports history, we're going to kick this off. We got March 30th today. On this date in 1981, the 43rd NCAA Men's Basketball Championship was held. The Indiana Hoosiers beat the North Carolina Tar Heels 63-50. Future Hall of Fame point guard Isaiah Thomas, little Pistons alum there. He was named the tournament most outstanding player.
Yeah, it's the same date in 19...
I guess I'll do the next one, too, since it's a
you might as well.
shout-out.
That's your guy. Go ahead.
Might as well. Fun little hometown shout-out for me here. March 30th, on the same date in 1991, Northern Michigan University wins its first ever NCAA hockey title. Hey to the Yoopers. Let's go.
And this is about how much people care.
Yes, Northern Michigan, the Wildcats. Cousin of mine went there.
Oh my goodness! This same date in 2001. You're killing me with your little town schools. All right, March 30th, 2001, at 15 years and 9 months, American swimmer Michael Phelps breaks the 200-meter butterfly world record at the U.S. World Championship Trials at Austin, Texas, becoming the youngest male to ever set a world mark.
And March 31st, 1973, Boston Bruins defenseman Bobby Orr scores his third career hat trick in a 7-3 loss at Toronto, but he becomes the first player in NHL history to score 100 points for 4 straight seasons. That's a crazy feat.
Definitely a crazy feat. March 31st, 1994, the Chicago White Sox assigns former NBA superstar Michael Jordan to the Birmingham Barons of Class AA Southern League, and then he returns to the NBA after 1 season.
And our last date in sports history, April 2nd, 1995, the longest strike in American Major League sports history at 232 days ends as Major League Baseball owners accept the players' offer to return to work without a contract. MLB is the first major pro sports league to lose an entire postseason due to the labor struggles.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. And that was this week in sports history. Now we're going to move on to the good old give or go.
I'm going to toss this first one up to you. NASCAR holds its first iRacing event at Virtual Homestead. Give or go.
I'm going to give on this for a little bit just because of the sheer fact that outside of NFL free agency, this is the only thing really happening in sports, and that is leagues and teams and entities starting these virtual leagues, whether it be with NBA and NBA 2K. NFL actually has played a little bit with Madden, but the big thing we've seen is NASCAR using the iRacing simulation experience, which is used for track testing by drivers in all array of racing, whether it be NASCAR or Indy racing, any of these different variations. And they are now using this to hold events. Now, this was first thought up by a number of drivers in NASCAR's top league with the actual Monster Energy Cup series. However, they ended up shifting and formulating all this within 1 week's time to be able to pull Fox Sports in, to pull NASCAR in. Fox Sports ended up picking Jeff Gordon and Mike Joy to do the commentary for these races. And then they ended up broadcasting this on television and on the internet and almost drew 1 million viewers. Ended up coming down to a great finish between Denny Hamlin and none other than Dale Earnhardt Jr. With a 1-2 finish by Hamlin and Jr. to kick off the very first race. Because of its success, they decided to do a second one. So now they did a second race today at Virtual Texas Motor Speedway. It ended up being won by Timmy Hill, who's actually an iRacing legend and notched his 647th win in simulation. And it again was broadcast on Fox Sports and by NASCAR. And early returns are they already broke 1 million viewers with today's broadcast. So definitely expect a lot more iRacing going forward.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, it's awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. I'm going to throw this next one to you. Ben Roethlisberger shows off his beard game during a Twitter video about the ongoing pandemic. Give or go.
I know he was trying to talk about coronavirus and be, in favor of social distancing, but this dude looks like Yukon Cornelius. All right. I can't. I gotta go. I can't even deal with that, man.
Oh, classic.
All right, I'm tossing this next one up to you. Both LA teams, the Rams and the Chargers, are about to debut or have debuted new logos with new jerseys to come too. Give or go.
Oh my gosh, we're only going to give on this a brief moment just so I can crap on it. The Chargers, when they did their little charge on thing and they kind of changed up some of their logoing and how they represent their team, it really wasn't too big of a difference, so I'm not too surprised. But they are going to be debuting new uniforms, I should say, that they announced on social media that they'll be debuting in April. So come April, we'll have new Chargers unis. However, for the Rams, this was an utter train wreck. The logo is the laziest thing I've ever seen and honestly kind of mimics the Chargers logo in a way. And it looks like that my 7-year-old daughter went and got on my Photoshop and decided to design a new logo for the Rams. It's that bad. The only saving grace for this logo in any kind of way is the only ram head that they use in any of their actual media packaging, and it itself looks pretty bad. So I don't know what the Rams were trying to do. I know they pretty much shipped away most of their defense, and their offense is all tied up, basically paying their quarterback in Jared Goff, so maybe they wanted something to go along with how they're playing. I don't know. But at that point, I'm done. We're going on to the next one. I'm throwing it to you. The XFL became the very first sports league to officially cancel its season due to the coronavirus pandemic. Give or go.
It's sad. I'm going to give on it for a minute just because it's sad that the XFL actually in this XFL 2.0 looked pretty good. I really enjoyed watching the games when I could catch them on the weekends. And it's really sad that but I think they're being proactive about it, which I like. And I think we're going to see more leagues. We already talked about NHL and NBA are probably going to follow suit. So, I mean, it's smart of them to do it, just to don't put anyone in harm's way potentially. So it makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does, and you don't want to expose anybody any more than they need to because this has ravaged some people pretty badly. So definitely best just to probably call it quits at this point because they only had 5 weeks left in their season anyways before playoffs, and with how now we're seeing deadlines being extended by government entities, it's probably just best that, and they probably made the right decision. However, I wish Vince McMahon would take a note out of his own book and would do the same with WrestleMania, but I digress.
Yeah, I'm upset, man. I had tickets to go to WrestleMania.
Hey, did you get yourself the shirt that says you weren't there?
I had tickets to go to WrestleMania in Tampa this year, and now I can't go.
It's absolutely horrendous. All right, but with that though, we're gonna go to the other sad moment that we're dealing with, and that is the week ahead. So with the week ahead, we have all sports are suspended.
Week ahead, of course.
Yeah, it's hashtag sportspocalypse right now. So sorry, no sports.
Yeah, this virtual thing, we got to get used to the lag here because like I just keep jumping in on you, and I apologize.
It's all good. It's all good. Technology.
I'm used to having you sitting here right next to me, so like we're within arm's reach of each other, so we can like take swings at each other if we need to.
But now we have to practice social distancing.
That's right. Yeah, it's okay because the 6 feet thing for you was before the coronavirus, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But hopefully looking forward to more moves in the NFL free agency. And one thing that we're not listed is NFL related. Hopefully we'll hear some news on the NFL draft because they're not doing any workouts leading up to the draft. They're not doing anything, but they're still having it as planned for now. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely.
Next, NASCAR iRacing. Yeah, they had their second event, which we already talked about today, virtual Texas Speedway, and we'll see if they do any more. I'll be really intrigued to see if they decide to. I think it's smart. I think they'll do it again, and they'll just kind of keep going as long as they can until all this kind of blows over.
Yeah, definitely, and I think it's great stuff that they're doing with that. So look to probably today or tomorrow, NASCAR will make another announcement about that. But also, then all of this pandemic, ESPN decided to do the right thing and brought back ESPN 8, The Ocho, for a little bit. We were able to watch great things like rock skipping and dodgeball, a lot of great stuff that you normally only got to see on The Ocho.
Yeah, I love it when they bring that back. Everett Lee, one of our guys here at Podcast City Network, said there's always local indie wrestling to support. Yes, that is true. I have a lot of friends. I have a few friends that are indie wrestlers up in Michigan, and one that actually is on roster of Impact too, which is fun little fact there. And then George says we should do a March Madness bracket of sports movies for the week ahead.
Ooh, that's not
an interesting
bad.
idea.
That's not a bad one. I like that.
That's an interesting idea. George, you should DM us after the fact. We'll tag team. We'll tag team working on this all together. I think that's a really good idea. Let's do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then don't forget, if you've been living under a rock in this time of pandemic, you have missed the fact that there is a certain special on Netflix called Tiger King. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. I only got one episode left. And absolutely insane.
No, I haven't. I've heard about this. I have not watched it. I will not watch it. I have better things to do with my time than sit down and binge Netflix. Like, I honestly have not. The only TV that I've watched in the last week and a half has been kids' cartoon shows because the kids won't leave me alone to watch.
Oh man, but you know what? There is one other thing that's going to be happening this week, though. One awesome
What's
thing.
that?
Chris Carnage is going to be appearing on the Everett Lee Show this Thursday, April 2nd at 9 p.m. live on Twitch and Facebook Live. You can either go to twitch.tv/Podcast City Network or facebook.com/Podcast City Network and check out the broadcast there. They're going to be talking all kinds of craziness after Chris Carnage had the Everett Lee on the Chris Carnage Show last week. So expect a lot of craziness and pandemonium from those two.
Yeah, Chris Carnage is kind of coming out of the hibernation that he was in for a while, so it's really fun to see him back.
Yeah, I heard he's getting stir crazy. Oh my goodness! But
he hasn't body slammed enough people yet.
No, he hasn't. And being in quarantine, he doesn't get to do it enough. So I'm sure he's like a caged animal, like some of those tigers on Tiger King. Hey, look how we segue through it, man. It's too easy. Too easy. But sadly, though, this is the end of our episode.
I have better things to do with my time. I'm still not watching the show. I'm sorry.
Oh, you'll watch it one time. Watch. You'll get curious. You'll get tiger curious.
I don't need to.
But sadly, this is the end of our episode. Make sure that if you want to keep up to date on all things Final Score, that you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at PCN Final Score and check out all the latest. And we will eventually announce episode 52 sometime here in the future once we have enough stuff to talk about. But sadly, this has been episode 51. I am Chris, and that's Craig, and you just watched Final Score. Have yourselves a great night.
This is Final Score, your number one podcast for sports news. Here are your hosts, Chris and Craig.
Podcast City Network.